Okay, I'm going to read a quote to you from a presentation given by a man named Fritz Springmeier. Now, I hadn't heard of this fellow before, at least I don't think I had. He was introduced to me by a fellow who I've become friendly with recently. He has a podcast, a radio broadcast on revolution.radio, and I've participated in some of his podcasts, roundtable discussions, and morning broadcasts as a guest, and it's been a very pleasant experience for me. His website is thefacthunter.com, and I encourage you to check it out and maybe listen to some of our podcasts there. Now, this Fritz Springmeier fellow, maybe I'm not qualified to give you a proper description on him. What I think that I will do is just read an extract from a speech. I basically am just saying the words that he said himself at a presentation, a 4-hour presentation which he gave. And the reason that I am basically just repeating his words is that the audio, the source audio from the presentation, which I'm going to link to, was recorded, I would guess, at some stage in the 1990s, roughly around then. And there's a lot of background hum to the microphone, and it just may not sound very pleasant to listen to. I want to make this sound at least less noisy, but also I don't want to be stealing from the man. I just want to give an introduction to it, and I think the portion which I've taken is a nice introduction to certain foundational philosophical questions which we should all be asking, irrespective of whether we think we are Christians or religious at all. Anybody who has a philosophical mind, or even a mind which he uses or she uses to think thoughts other than I'm hungry, or I'm sleepy, or I'm wanting something, above any kind of base level. Anybody who has any kind of higher-mindedness whatsoever will need to be considering certain questions, such as, especially if they get to, middle age, and they start looking at the last part of their journey in life. Is this it? Is that all it was? Will there be ever anything else? What was the point to anything? And that always leads to questions such as, is there a God? And if God exists, if he's all-powerful, why does God allow evil to exist in the world? And that is a question that people will be asking themselves. Now, any sane person will be asking themselves that. Any rational person will be asking themselves, what is evil? Is this what is evil, what I'm seeing? I think a lot of people will be thinking that and have thought that now for a while, and you know what I'm referring to. I don't even need anymore to refer to anything in any specific terms. So why does God allow this to happen in the world if he's all-powerful? Does that imply that there is some grand plan that we can't see yet from our perspective, we're not aware of yet? We might be able to guess at, but even if we can guess at what it might be, we might not like the answers. But maybe we might say to ourselves, well, we aren't in a position to make any sound or rational judgments about what the ultimate objective of all of this, and by this I mean our existence on the earth and the earth's creation and existence itself. We may not be in a position to either anticipate the outcome or make any judgments on what it is or how we got there, and the method by which we were brought into a final realization of things. And the other thing is then, if God created everything, and God is good, then where does evil come from? Is there a purpose to evil? I bet you that's a question that people have been asking themselves a lot lately as well. Is there a purpose to this, other than what the people who are perpetrating these things think? Is there something beyond even what their plans were written for and what their plans were enacted for? Because at the moment they are being enacted. Is there something beyond even their objectives that they're not aware of? Okay, so maybe that's enough of a lead-in. Now I'm going to quote directly from this fellow called Fritz Springmeier. So he says, "We have a problem. Back there in the garden. What entered into the garden? Evil. And this is a problem that confronts all of us. Here we have a God that's omniscient, a God that's omnipotent, that is all-knowing and almighty, and yet something that this all-knowing and all-powerful God that's wholly good, something that this wholly good God created, contains evil. That's presented a lot of people a logic problem, and the philosophers in the 1940s were stumped by this problem. A lot of them started building their own philosophical systems. There happened to have been one particular gentleman, and he spent many decades building up a philosophical system and exposing all the illogic of religion. And then by the time the 1960s came, he realized that his system that he had created had the same problem with logic. And he looked around, and other philosophers were also discovering all of their systems had the same problems with logic that Christianity and other religions had. Well, a lot of times people go to their clergyman or to someone else that they look up to, and they ask for answers to this problem of evil. Why is there evil in the world? And they're given simplistic, insufficient answers. They're told, just have faith. Or somebody like the clergyman says, oh, there is no contradiction. Or a very skillful apologist starts describing all the terms and, omnipotent, omniscient, good, and he turns them into such vague terms that they become meaningless, or maybe they just declare, we only see through a glass darkly. Okay, these insufficient answers leave many reasonable persons deeply disturbed by the absurdity of the conventional belief in God. Some have decided that human life is self-defeating, tragic, and absurd. But a better answer, and I will give those in a minute, but what's interesting is the philosopher that I was describing, who was from Boston, who taught there at the university, Harry had spent all these decades writing a book to tear apart Christianity, and he realized that his own philosophical system had the same problems. So he spent the next decade writing another book, showing how Christianity and all other religions, it wasn't that he'd become a Christian, describing how actually they do have a lot of answers. So what are these better answers? To show people that every mathematical, scientific, and philosophical system has vagueness and contradictions within their principles. Philosophers cannot define and defend their own criteria of meaning without employing self-defeating arguments. All philosophy and mathematical systems have paradoxes. When one pushes to get total clarity of terms, one has to either accept A, some vagueness of terms, or B, accept paradox with extremely clear terms. Common sense of human existence means that we must accept the contradictions that accompany the complexity of the sense and nonsense of our spiritual environment. Somebody tells you that they love you, and then here they are, squeezing the toothpaste from the middle. Now, if you had a computer program set up to define whether somebody loved you or not, you would never get the answer, because human relationships and human life can't be broken down into logic. There's a lot of nonsense in our life. The problem of evil is actually a sign that reveals that there are deep issues of life that must be plumbed, like a crack in the earth's crust that plunges out of sight. God can view evil in a different view because he is above time and knows that with his unlimited power all things will work for good to them that love God. God has unlimited power to bring something good out of evil. Proof of this ability is found in the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. In other words, evil is not out of control. God has said, I'm fixing a point here in time that evil can start. And why did he allow evil to start? So that each one of us would have the choice to make whether we wanted to love him or not. We're not robots. If we were programmed to love him, it wouldn't be real love. But we have the choice to reject him and do whatever we want with our life. So he set a point here, and he said, evil can exist from here to there. And then he's given us the life, death, and resurrection of Christ to show that any evil within that time period can be transformed to good, which he will do, and Lord willing, we will all see. In order to bring true love into human existence, God has had to allow choice, which includes the choice of rejection and disobedience by his creation. After a period of allowing to choose to love him, God promises to destroy evil. Now you're asking, well, Fritz, we all know this. We all have to face this issue, either on a conscious or subconscious level. We all wrestle with the problem of why is there evil when God is so powerful and so good? Well, the reason why I'm telling you this is because it's very easy for somebody to come up here and expose evil and not give you hope. See, I was called to do 3 things. I was called to expose evil, to give hope, and to call people back to the Word of God. That's my assignment. There's a lot of people in prophetic ministries that they're able to give real easy hope. Oh, just vote these crooks out of office, you know? If you don't really expose evil, you can give these simplistic answers. But if you really expose evil, and how many people really plumb the depths of how evil this world is, then you've got a really hard task to try to give people hope. But that's what I'm trying to do, because this is very important. That's why we're going over, because given a chance, I destroy the foundation of practically everything you believed in, and I may today. Satan uses trauma as a vehicle to program into us a lie. All of you know, as you've tried to go on the correct path, how rocky it is. First, a trauma is applied to our life. Then, a second lie is offered, which, when accepted, alleviates or improves the pain of the trauma. And third, systems of lies are built to trap us within the confines of the lies we believe in. Now, this is very important, and it's a strange way that I discovered this. I have been deprogramming people that were mind control victims of the Illuminati, which is, the Illuminati are generational satanic families. We will discuss those later on. What is generational Satanism? It means these families have practiced human sacrificing, Satanism. They've been practicing it for generations after generations, secretly. And as I was working on the mind control of these people, the type of programming, the generic name for it, is called trauma-based mind control. I began to realize that the elements of mind control that they were using on these people were also being applied to the population in general. Maybe not as sophisticated a package and in such an intense way, but they were still being applied. All of us receive trauma, and there's so many ways that this could occur. Like here, I give an example. A Christian's life is cut short by Satan. The lie that is offered the survivors is God owes every person a full, happy, prosperous 70 to 80 year life. God is then blamed. Why did God let this happen? The resulting bitterness opens up a door for a person to get into immorality, which further entraps the person. The reality is, if God gave us what we deserved in our weak, sinful nature, none of us would be alive, because mankind is in rebellion to God, our Creator. People need to focus on what we have received from God, not what we haven't received. To focus on what wasn't given, rather than the great gifts that have been given, is ungratefulness. Therefore, when a trauma is applied to our life, we can use that trauma to program a lie into our life, or we can grow spiritually by seeing the deeper spiritual realities that the trauma is trying to teach us. Now, that last part is very much in the style or in the philosophy of Alan Watts, who would say that life is the great teacher. And I will mention that because that shows that at the core of Christianity and Zen Buddhism is the same message. And people need not be fearful of different paths to the same truth.